Pretty
Run
exciting.
awkwardly this way.
Give me a moment, I gotta put
Yep.
this down.
No, you're good. I gotta get settled in front of the camera. I gotta make sure I don't break it, all that.
I wanna look at the framing, I always do.
Okay, go for it. I mean, this is the type of stuff I'm just gonna edit out anyways.
Okay. Got it. I'm like, oh, there's a red exit sign, it's your camera.
Yeah. I mean, I can actually edit all this stuff because I actually took video editing classes and stuff like that
Nice.
last semester, trying to get a media production certificate.
Nice.
So, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to X75 Productions, the experience coverage of DerpyCon. We've done the panels, now it's time for the interviews. And joining me first this weekend is Miss Wendee Lee, who is the voice of Scorpina, Alpha 6, and several monsters in Power Rangers. So this also is now doubling as a Voices from the Grid interview.
Aye, aye, aye! Warning, everyone! We're about to crash!
Well, actually, it's interesting they go right to Alpha because they just showed off. We'll get into what you did on the show in a moment, but they just announced the 30th anniversary special with the cast. You have Johnny Young Bosch coming back. Walter Jones is returning for the first time in 28 years.
Aww.
Steve Cardenas is coming back. David Yost is coming back for the first time since Zio.
Wow.
Catherine Sutherland's returning. Karen Ashley. They actually have an actress who's going to be playing Trini's daughter.
Wow.
So, which is
that's
really nice to see, a
lovely.
nice little tribute for Trini.
Oh, beautiful.
And then they also had an alpha with them in the group shot.
Oh man, that's so
Like,
cool.
how does it make you feel, being somebody who has voiced prime characters, various monsters on the show, like to see it here now, 30 years later, just how much it's grown?
It's incredible. I mean, the whole franchise is sort of a surprise because we had worked on different versions of promos for the title. We were kind of workshopping it for many years at Saban Productions, trying to get it off the ground, and I literally was involved with 3 completely different edited versions of the presentation, revoiced, recut 3 different times over 10 years before it sold.
Really?
So it was a very,
So you're talking about like in the 80s working
Right.
on this
before
show.
it ever started, it was a Haim Saban brainchild. It was his sort of a bit of a vanity project. He really wanted to get it off the ground and believed in it.
Well, it's interesting because we always knew, like, he brought Spider-Man to Japan. He was a big benefactor, like I believe him and Stan Lee were benefactors in bringing it over with the idea of bringing the Super Sentai to America in some form. Because, like, we know Spider-Man happened around that time frame too. I think that was 80s.
Yeah,
And then, we didn't get Mighty Morphin until 1993.
it's amazing.
So I was like 6, maybe going on 7.
It was 93 when it started?
Yeah, August
Oh,
28th,
okay.
1993. That was, and I was born in 86. So it's like, about 6 or 7 years old or something like that when Power Rangers debuted.
Yeah, the fact that it just kept going for so long, we certainly thought we would see the end of it. And to see it revived at this point and going on to 30 years is amazing.
Yeah, now, the first character you were brought in to do was Scorpina.
Yes, Scorpina.
Now, question in this regard, like, because you mentioned that you've been working with Saban for like a decade at this point. So how much of the Sentai did you actually know about in regards to the character of Scorpina?
Sentai, meaning
The Super Sentai, Jew Ranger, which is what the show is like, like all the action sequences. And
all the
stuff.
Japanese.
Yeah, all the
footage.
Japanese
Yeah,
footage,
yeah.
How much of that did you actually kind of like know about to like kind of maybe draw off of to do Scorpina's voice and stuff like that?
Quite a bit. We actually used the original footage and audio as reference for everything we recorded. But as a writing team, I was part of the adapting team for a while, and also Power Rangers was the first show I started voice directing on. And we were working on rewriting material to work with the timing of the new live action footage married to the original Japanese stuff. So there was a lot of referencing back and forth. And we made a decision with Scorpina to sort of make her a Rita Repulsa light. And so combining those 2 concepts and the original voice is how I came up with my sort of evil version of her.
So interestingly, for the last decade, I've been working on a fan film trilogy for Power Rangers.
Wow.
Do you know who my ultimate baddie is?
Who?
Scorpina.
Oh!
The whole idea is that I took elements of the Sentai where Goldar and Scorpina are actually husband and wife.
Oh, interesting.
That child at the end of Jew Ranger is actually Scorpina and Goldar's child.
Wow.
So I would take that concept. So like Rita's like the baddie in the first one, but Goldar perishes in that one, which then brings in Scorpina, who's really ticked off at Rita for Goldar's demise, and then it's like leads into the third one, which is like this massive epic battle.
Yeah, it brings up a whole different set of conflict,
Yeah, and then it also plays off the factor, like one of the other things I played off of, which was never done in Power Rangers, but was done in Jew Ranger, was the fact that the Red Ranger and the Green Ranger were brothers.
Ooh, I like that idea.
So like I played that into it a little bit, while also taking certain elements of Mighty Morphin, but I only have story written down, I don't have script, and it's gonna take forever, and now that Hasbro owns Power Rangers, that puts a lot more dents in a lot of things.
Got you.
So it's just all concept in here at this point. Moving on to, you did Alpha 6 was the next one. So I think Alpha 6 was the one where everyone kind of goes, why does Alpha 6 have like kind of a Brooklyn vibe to him with the yo-yo-yos and stuff like that? Where did that come from?
Did I do yo-yo-yos?
I think it was in
remember.
the beginning phase of Turbo.
Really?
Alpha 6 kind of had.
Yo!
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right, we did do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it kind of got phased out
Yeah.
midway through the season, and then Alpha 6 kind of mellowed out a little bit. Like, where was the inspiration behind that?
I think we wanted to goose up the character a little and be deliberate about the voice change and the shift in the character, so we were just looking for new handles to sort of hang familiar phrases on. So that's right, I had forgotten we even did that.
Yo!
Well, the reason I bring that up is because right now the podcast is on hiatus. At the time of recording, we have Zeo recorded, and our intros are about to be edited, and then once that's done, we're going to start releasing our Zeo season, and then we're going to start recording Turbo. Which is why I also want to bring the question, because it's like what we do is we sit down, we watch the episodes, and we'll do like 2-3 episodes per episode, and we'll talk about it. We're literally people in their 30s and 40s who are literally taking kids so way too seriously.
Okay.
But yeah, so it was kind of interesting. What was it like in Turbo? Because you were there. You had like that changing of the guard. You went from Jason, David, Frank, Tanya, and all those characters, and then you brought in you shifted it completely. What was that like? Not just on screen for you seeing it happen, but also behind the scenes.
It was rough, I have to be honest. We were going through a big union debate, whether or not to take the cast full union, and it was not originally a union show.
Still isn't actually.
Probably right.
I think it might now be union with the whole Netflix thing.
Hope so, yeah, probably.
But it wasn't union up to when Saban had it back through until he sold to Hasbro. It had not been union.
So you can see the formula. That's a huge way of cutting the cost and profit sharing with the cast. So it felt semi-unethical, to be honest. And so we were really pushing for unionizing, and especially for the on-screen actors who were doing their own stunts, which was highly, highly dangerous. And the union dissuades that. They really frown on you doing your own stunts.
Unless you're like Tom Cruise or something like that.
Perhaps, yeah. But with how many years of filmmaking under your belt, when you're starting with a cast who's, for instance, when I worked with Johnny Young Bosch, he was 18 years old, fresh out of high school, and had never had an acting experience, and was suddenly working full-time doing all his stunts, voicing in between all of his on-camera work, and the same goes with the whole cast, and inevitably people were getting injured. So yes, you can be very willing to say yes, and you want to do your own stunts when you're a trained
martial artist.
Yeah, many of them were. But when you're repeating stunt after stunt, the risk of injury is very high.
The repetition.
Yeah, so we really wanted to see the cast have medical coverage and to have limits on the hours that they were working, and just to.
I heard the hours were nuts.
They were crazy.
Ooh. It's okay.
Just
this is a normal thing at a DerpyCon interview.
But what we would do is the sound stage was downstairs. It was the set where most of the scenes were shot. The interiors were shot downstairs, And upstairs were the recording studios. And so we would grab the actors in between their scenes to bring them up to do their voiceover. And they were voicing their own roles. So anytime there was I always say helmet, and I feel like I'm saying the wrong thing. Whenever they were wearing the helmets, all of that dialogue was recorded in the studio for obvious reasons.
Yeah, because it's like everything gets muffled.
Something like that, yeah. So those guys were working most of the time. If they weren't on set, they were rehearsing and choreographing stunt work, and then in between that, we were desperate to get people up into the recording studio. So very hard days. When presented with trying to go union, sort of as, what do we call it, favored nations, where everybody is included in a negotiation, a contract negotiation, basically they presented their claims to Saban and it was rejected and the cast was fired.
Yeah, because like I remember seeing Johnny, because you mentioned Johnny Young Bosch. I was at one of his panels, I think it was like AUSA years ago, and somebody had actually asked him what was it like, you know, how did you find, or like how did he find out about it? He said like we found out with the casting notice in the like the trades and stuff like that. That's how him and the cast found out. Because they weren't told that they were being let go. They found out that they're just being recasted through this casting call.
Yeah.
So like, you know, it's kind of interesting, like, you know, hearing it from that perspective, because this is a whole new perspective that like never even heard of before.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh.
Like we've always heard it from maybe from like their perspective.
I see.
We've never heard it from like the actual like what you just said, like the whole breakdown of like, what went down around that time.
I think enough time has passed now that it's important to sort of write that story and eliminate some of the wrongs that were being done at the time. The whole thing with going union really is to protect your actors and your cast, and for obvious reasons that we just laid out. So Netflix is helping to create a contract that is a little more a little more appealing for producers and also covers the cast as well. So it's been a really big step forward for us. It's great.
Right. And then real quick, I just want to talk about some of the monsters that you've done. What are some of the ones that you had the most fun with?
You know, if you told me their names, I could tell you.
To be honest, you've done a lot of.
I mean, I did dozens. I did a lot of voicing.
Like it was funny. Like I was like looking at it on IMDb earlier, and I was like, man, I wish I had pen and paper to write this down. It's like because you've done so many, but like what are some of the ones that just kind of popped to the head that make you go?
There was a red-eyed monster. There were some that were like feminine. There were some that were very masculine. We tried to be super fluid about voicing both.
Right.
And sometimes we go for high comedy. Sometimes we go for really, deadly and intimidating. It just depended on kind of what the rubber suit looked like.
Yeah.
And how it played into the story. But there was a lot of vocal stress with that, so it was very hard for the voice actors too, and we really wanted protections from the union as well. But when you're doing a voice like this for hours at a time, you're really grinding down on your vocal cords.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. As a hockey player, like we yell, like when I was a goalie, we had to yell 200 feet down the ice, and like kind of like the same thing. You grind down your voice, but you have to do it for like a good 60 minutes long.
It's like flexing a muscle. You're using your diaphragm and just pelting out those shouts.
But with that, I'm not going to take up any much more of your time. I know you got people lining up for autographs and everything. What are two last questions? One, what are you most looking forward to this weekend at DerpyCon? And then two, where can everyone find you on social media?
I'll start with two. So I'm on the Twitterverse at Wendee Lee VO, and I'm also on Facebook still, yes, at Wendee Lee-artist. And I can also be reached by email with an E before my name, ewendy at good old Earthlink. And
Earthlink still exists?
Still exists. I don't let go of it because I'm still holding on to many friends from the past that I've accumulated over the years, and I also often get work inquiries, so it's good to hold on to. But the Gmail one is a-okay too for the Twitter. I'm just thrilled to be here. I've never been to New Jersey. I'm excited, and also it's the 10-year, we were just talking about this, it's the 10-year anniversary of the Sandy hurricane, so it's been really cool to see the local coverage of that. It's not nearly as comprehensive as we see in the West, and just connecting with the fans here and the support and the love. It's really a special thing. I've missed doing conventions. This is only the second one I've done in 3 years, but I hope to do more. We're doing it safely. And I appreciate all of your support out there. Thank you so much, you guys.
Awesome, so much. Wendee, thank you so much. And we'll be back with more interviews here at DerpyCon later through the weekend.
See you, Space Cowboys.
I'm gonna knock this off real quick. There's one thing I'm gonna ask you real quick, if you can record